Sports build champions and leaders, but every champion has moments of struggle, pressure, anxiety, burnout, and those moments deserve real support. PAX Health is proud to sponsor the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast because they believe mental health care should be available when you need it, as you need it. Therapy and psychiatric services for kids, teens, communities, and families. Telehealth and in-person appointments are available within 48 hours. PAX Health, people helping people. Visit pax.health. That's PAX.health. JAG Physical Therapy, providing rehabilitative recovery from sports and soft tissue injuries to knee, foot, ankle, hip, shoulder, elbow, and back injuries. Schedule your appointment with JAG Physical Therapy today and meet their experienced team of physical therapists, occupational therapists, athletic trainers, and exercise physiologists invested in your full recovery. Get back the life you love at JAG Physical Therapy, the most awarded physical therapy provider in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, just visit jagpt.com. That's JAGPT.com. Lacrosse families, meet Orgo, the calendar app that actually thinks like a sports parent. Orgo syncs with team apps you already use and enriches schedules with real-world logistics. Every event shows travel times, early arrival buffers, carpool assignments, conflict alerts, and time-specific weather so you know what gear to pack. Get your athletes on it too. Orgo teaches time literacy, an executive skill for life. One subscription, whole family. Code LAX25 is 25% off. Just $44 locks in sanity for the whole year. Visit www.orgohq.com. That's www.orgohq.com. This is the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Block.
I'm Bill Farr.
I'm Anthony Terranova.
And this here is Gil Swenson. Welcome to the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. Hello, everybody. Boys, how we doing? Happy Mother's Day from yesterday. That's why we're a day delayed here. How was everybody's Mother's Day?
Great day. All focus there. All focus was there.
As it should be. As it should be with a 1-year-old in the home. Bill, how about you?
Oh, yeah.
Good. It was good. It was nice to spoil the wife. She had a good day, so it's awesome.
Outstanding. Spent the day in North Jersey with my sister and my aunt. We did a little breakfast, and then I went to see the Michael movie. That was what the ladies wanted to do. Good throwback to reminding me of my childhood. I have a problem separating art and artist a little bit, so I'm not. My sister's a big Michael Jackson fan. I'm not, for reasons passing understanding. But it did make me relive some good stuff from my early part of my life, so I guess that's a positive.
The man can perform. Gotta give him that.
He was good. He was good.
You know what I think is my favorite biopic is the Elton John movie Rocket Man. That movie is elite.
Really? I've never seen it.
Yeah.
No, haven't seen that one.
If you're ever looking for something to, I like Elton John's music, so maybe that's it. But great movie, just great movie. Taron Egerton acts his balls off. Great job by him.
All right, we'll go with that on a rainy day movie. Tharp's movie day suggestions. We'll make sure that we put that clip out in the summer one day when it's raining cats and dogs and nobody's going to go outside. So let's stick with the lacrosse that's actually happening on the field of play in the state of New Jersey. And today's opening face-off, and really a good one, I think, by you, Nova. So I'm going to take the ball and direct it over to you at the wing and get us moving.
Yeah, so a lot of the times throughout this podcast, we pretty much focus on the top 25, maybe get up to 26, 27 teams that we constantly talk about week in, week out. But there's 200 teams in New Jersey, and we don't give those guys enough love, top to bottom. So I want to just give a little shout out to a very few teams that have really kind of done a great job this season. Most of the teams I'm about to list off kind of pretty much had a 180 from last year, completely turned their season around. So just like I said, just name a few names here. First off is Verona, 12-1. They were the last undefeated team up until they lost in the finals of the ECT's County tournament. They were 11-7 last year, so not too far off win wise. But they're what they put together so far this season, getting to the finals, is definitely something noteworthy. Wilberforce 9-2 this year. Last year they were 1-3. They didn't even get to finish their season. They had to end their season short, and so to turn around and have 9 wins already, it's pretty impressive what those guys are doing down there. Lenape Valley 12-2 this year. Last year they were 11-10, so already kind of past that win mark that they had. West Milford 11-2 this year. Last year they only had 8 wins and 13 losses. So again, another team that's doing some really good things. Paula Six in Haddonfield. They were 4-14 last year. This year now they're 11-3 already, and still continuing to find wins. Riverdale matched their win total already at this point in the season. They're 12-3 this year. They have one of the best goalies in the state who is very very underlooked. So we want to give them a little shout out there. Cedar Creek 13-1. Haddon Township 12-3. Reached their win total already as last year, so I assume they're going to be in the 15-ish range with the end of the season. So really doing some good stuff there. And another really impressive one is St. John Vianney, who is 10-4 this year, and last year they were 4-11. So that's pretty much, there's definitely many more that I can be throwing out there, but these are just some of the few that have really done some really good things, have some really good numbers in lax numbers, and just want to give those guys a little bit of shout out, even though they aren't necessarily sniffing the top 20 right now.
So what you're saying is, we see you. We see you out there. Even though maybe we don't talk about you, we see you. So keep up the good work. Let's take a look back at what's happened over the last week. A couple of regular season games, and then we'll talk about the county tournament slate. Last Tuesday, a big-time matchup. Seton Hall Prep and St. Augustine. St. Augustine coming out victorious 10-8. Turnova, you reffed that game. How'd it go?
I did not ref that game. I watched that game.
I'm sorry, you watched that game.
Yes, I watched the game.
Was that a Duban special?
Duban was on that game, yes.
That was a Duban special,
Duban was on that game with Pukash and I think McMichael, I believe. Yes, no, it was a great game. It was close until the third quarter. Then St. Augustine really pulled away. Then in the last 3-4 minutes, Seton Hall made it really, really exciting and really close. But you could just see when you're watching the game, it was just two teams that are loaded with talent on both sides of the ball. And it's super high level lacrosse. Again, I did some college games this year, and a lot of the games that I had, both those teams are crushing the teams that I had at the college level. Like, that's just the level of play that these guys are constantly producing, on both ends of the ball. So it was really impressive to see. Seton Hall, I think, needed to win a couple more ground balls in the middle. I think they need to change up their shot selection a little bit more against St. Augustine. The guy likes to, go to the ground a little bit on a lot of shots. And then I think, towards that fourth quarter, every single bounce shot was starting to go in. So I think if they were adjusting their shots a little bit earlier, they would have found a little bit more success in that. But the St. Augustine goalie played out of his mind early on in the game to kind of help them just kind of continue to get that lead. And that was just, fail clears, some, dumb mistakes here and there from both teams. I thought Seton Hall actually struggled to kind of win their one-on-one matchups through a large majority of the game. They were kind of going to like an invert set where they're popping the guy behind, and it was just, really kind of slow to get those rotations, and it kind of just became, players making plays versus, just pure ball movement, finding high-end, opportunities. But St. Augustine is tested. They did what they need to do, but the one thing with St. Augustine right now that I will say is they need to learn how to play 4 quarters. It's been kind of a lot of these big time games that they've had one quarter where they've kind of had a big drop off. Even when I saw them against Perkiomen the following game, they were up 6-7 goals again in the fourth, going into the fourth quarter, and it ended up being like a 3-goal game for pretty much no reason. I think once they've put together a full 4-quarter game, they're going to be even that much better. And at the same time, they don't need to be putting that together quite yet, as the playoffs are just coming through here, and they got their little matchup with Delbarton coming up on the 20th, which is going to be number 1 versus number 2 battle. And some bragging rights going into the playoffs.
Another game, this one you did officiate on Wednesday, Bridgewater and Rumson. And Rumson, boy, is just laying it on people recently. Rumson defeated Bridgewater 13-3. I know we don't need to spend a ton of time on that one, given the final score. But what was the Cliff's Notes version?
Yeah, Cliff Notes version, it was Rumson just dominated time of possession. Like 90 to 10. Like that type of domination in terms of time of possession. Then when the Bridgewater was able to get stops, it was either a fail clear or I think there was 3 or 4 offsides. They just could not get anything going offensively when they had the ball, early on. So it's just really just an impressive performance by Rumson. That offense is very, very good. And if you're not able to kind of win faceoffs, when you do get stops, you just give the ball kind of right back. Things spiral out of control, like we say about, Chatham as well, great, Delbarton, those great teams. Rumson has the offense put together and just, Bridgewater just wasn't able to find enough possessions throughout the course of the game.
All right, let's jump over to the county tournaments. In the which county is this? Essex, right?
Essex County
tournament. Essex County tournament. Livingston defeated Verona. Sorry about that. A little brain fart out of me in my New Jersey geography. Passaic County tournament. West Milford beat Wayne Valley. And the Morris County tournament semifinals. A couple of lopsided games, which really I don't really think I expected both to be this lopsided. Delbarton defeated Lakes 16-2. I don't know when the last time that score was that disparate in a game involving those two teams. And Chatham defeated West Morris 17-4, setting up the Morris County final that we'll talk about in detail in a little while. And that's going to be Tuesday, which will be the day that many of you listen to this as it drops in your feed. And the Union County tournament. A great game early in the week. Scotch Plains 9, Westfield 8 in overtime, and then Summit went on to defeat Scotch Plains 10-5. So Union County just kind of cleaning it up. And then last thing that we'll look back on it, even though it just happened. Westfield traveled down to Haddonfield in a game that I officiated just now on Monday night as we record this, and same score. Different result for Westfield this time from when they played Scotch Plains. Westfield defeated Haddonfield 9-8 in overtime. Pretty fun game to ref, I have to say.
Was it double OT?
So I'm sorry, double OT. You're correct. It was the boys just played. Not a lot of fouls. It was what you expect from two teams that are pretty buttoned up, and I had a great time. I'll just say that it was there are games that are like that. You're like, oh man, that was an ass ache, and I wouldn't want that one again. That was two great coaches, respectful, asking questions. Same thing from all the kids. High level lacrosse. A really nice night out. You can't beat that. So I was impressed by both teams. So let's look ahead a little bit. Let's do the Somerset County semifinals first, guys. We have a pair of games: Gil against Pingree and Bridgewater against Bernards. Where are we looking for as the Somerset County tournament wraps up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is going to be, how does Bridgewater respond? They had a pretty convincing win over Immaculata on Saturday in the quarters. I think everyone kind of expected, Bridgewater to win that game, and Bernards is they have an absolute superstar in Logan Stevens, and unfortunately just got to watch him in person drop 10 goals on my face, and he's incredibly talented, and last time they played, it was a 9-5 game, but I think that Logan was Bridgewater did a pretty okay job limiting Stevens, and if they're able to expand that a little bit, I think that Bridgewater's going to have a definite advantage at the face-off dot. So they'll be able to have a good time of possession advantage, and I think there's some things that Bridgewater can do offensively to take control of the pace of the game. I think Bernards has a really frenetic pace they like to play out. They like to get up and out, and I look for Bridgewater to control the game. And then obviously Pingree and Gil is always a great battle. Last year was the county final. Gil won the first matchup 7-4 in a game that was incredibly close for 3 quarters before Gil pulled away. I think that Pingree's still Pingree, right? They escaped Ridge in overtime in the quarterfinals. So they're kind of coming in, on the back foot a little bit, but it's always going to be a tight game. They're going to sit in their zone. They're gonna pack it in. They're going to make Gil really work for it. Um, and Gil's in need of a win here. They've had an up and down season. We talked about the early season, playing all those out of state games. They lose to Bridgewater. They get one back by beating Pingree, but it's been kind of an uneven stretch here for Gill. So we know they're going to do really well at the face-off X. But it's going to be interesting is Gill going to be able to sustain success, and will Pingree be able to chip together, 5 or 6 goals? I think 6 is probably the number you want to get to if you're Pingree. And can they stay out of the penalty box? I think Gill got 2 or 3 man up. They got a fast break goal. So that's 3 goals right there. So if Pingree is able to kind of limit those mistakes, it'll be a tight game. But um, either way, it's shaping up to definitely be an interesting semifinal.
Another game I'm looking forward to on Saturday is the Shore Conference quarterfinal, Manasquan and Holmdel. It was a good game when they played earlier in the season, so the rematch will be interesting. The Shore is always one of the conferences that conference county, because they missed. There's a conglomeration of Monmouth and Ocean counties in that tournament, so that's why we just call it the Shore Conference tournament. And that stuff will take place next week in terms of semifinals and finals. But that Manasquan Holmdel game, I think 2 pretty evenly matched teams that, again, it could get interesting. Let's just say that. That one could be one that the officials walk away from going like, oh, that one wasn't so easy. What do we see there?
Yeah, I mean this was the one that got everyone on Holmdel's radar. They beat Manasquan. It was kind of convincing too. It was like 13-7, something like that. Pretty decent sized gap, all things considered. So obviously, we figured out as the season went on that Manasquan is not the Manasquan that we've known of the past few years, but they're still a tough out. So it'll be really interesting if Holmdel's able to replicate that early season success. I know Manasquan's made some changes defensively in terms of switching to his zone and stuff. So it'll be interesting.
2 other games that we have an eye on Tuesday and Wednesday. That just to see, maybe like a measuring stick of where everybody truly is here as we're really getting into the the meat of the season where teams are hitting their stride, or should be at least. On Tuesday, St. Augs and Ocean City will square off, and on Wednesday, Don Bosco and Bergen will play. So we'll keep an eye and an ear on those as we move forward. But let's talk about the Morris County final, guys. Tuesday night.
Hey, Glock, just real quick. This is my fault. The Bergen County final was also this weekend, and Bosco beat Ridgewood. I think it was 8-2. It's my fault. I didn't put it on the sheet, but we also that did happen. So I think Bosco. It's been 6 in a row for those guys up in Bergen County. I think they did what they were supposed to do, but we just totally forgot to mention it. That's my bad.
All right, Don Bosco burners, just get after Tharp on Instagram. Please feel free. Let's talk Morris County final. I think this is a pretty anticipated matchup. It's a rematch of last season. It will take place on Tuesday at Drew University, and it is Delbarton and Chatham. High-powered offense from Chatham. Delbarton really kind of not shockingly settling into be the team that we had thought they would be, despite maybe a little bit of a schizophrenic mid-season. I don't even know how to say it necessarily accurately. It's not like Delbarton was ever down, given the schedule that they've played. But there was at least a feeling that they might go through the season without losing. So obviously that didn't end up happening. But this still is a matchup of 2 of the top 5 or 6 teams in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, this is going to be a great game. It's going to come down to 2 possessions. I think Chatham needs to not just win possessions just because they have a great offense. I think, the Barnes is one of those defenses that can actually hold this, top powered offense at bay, throughout the course of the game. During possessions. So they have to find almost, I feel like, a 2-to-1 possessions. They got to ride extra hard. And then again, on top of that, the Barnes going to have on paper the face-off advantage. So if they can't, make it a close at the face-off X, plus, they're not winning those tough ground ball battles, the Barn could be doing what the Barn's been doing for those last 6, 7 games. But that Chatham team, it is so electric offensively. If they get into a flow state, no one's going to be able to kind of stop that offense from putting the balls in the back of the net. But like I said, the Barn is playing at a super high level right now. When you go to beating Summit by 7 goals, and then you turn that around by beating Chaminade by 10 goals, and then the rest of the games have been running clock since then. They're definitely playing at an elite level right now. They're playing high level lacrosse when they need to be playing lacrosse. So, but this is going to be a very, very good game, a very, very physical game, and one I'm certainly looking forward to watch.
Yeah, I think like you said, Kane Connaught definitely has the advantage on paper with the face-off. So it'll be interesting if Chatham can make it competitive. I thought that Chatham would beat West Morris. I was not expecting 17-4. So considering that that's the game Chatham's coming off of, and according to the stats, it was essentially 50-50 for Luke Gauss. I think Chatham's got a lot of momentum right now. And I think it's a game that they thought they should have beat Delbarton last year. I know in talking with Coach Carpello and stuff, like he thought that Chatham left it out there. And as skilled and talented as Delbarton is, I think it's safe to say that this is going to be one of the most high-powered offenses they've had to face this year. So it's going to be really, really interesting. Like, who's going to win those little battles in between the lines? It looks like, Chatham might have made a goalie change as well. I know Davenport's been playing in goal for them the past few games, so it'll be interesting to see, like, have they committed to a goalie change? Is it just they're having some big results, so kids are getting different playing time? That'll be interesting. And the Delbarton goalie, McGinty, he's had some good games. He's had some questionable games, as Glock said in the earlier part of the season. So and as to use Glock's word, schizophrenic as Delbarton was, Chatham has some interesting results in there too. Losses to Ridgewood, for example, stand out. So it'll be interesting to see like where they're at. But I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than this. I think this is going to be one of the premier games of the season. Last year was like 13-12 or 12-11 games. So I'm super stoked to watch this game play out again.
The last season, I mean, was as hotly contested a game as you could possibly have. So, I think sometimes that storyline is a little overblown, but I don't think it's overblown in this game. I think that the teams are it's fresh in everybody's mind there because of the returners that played key roles in that game last year. So I think there's going to be some juice up in Madison on Tuesday night. So let's.
It wasn't there like a super controversial play, like literally off the first face-off, like a
Yeah,
massive hit that was like.
there was Will Petticano, now playing at Duke, laid a big hit on the Chatham faceoff guy to open the game. Penalty was called, and that kind of just set the tone for what that game was going to be. And it was 48 minutes of high level lacrosse for sure, but there was an element of Rock'em Sock'em Robots in there as well. And it's look, there's nothing like it. It's I talk about it every year. I talked about it a couple of times already. This is my favorite time of the year, man. Tomorrow's going to be beautiful weather. There's going to be, I would imagine, a pretty large crowd at Drew. The juice is going to be flowing from both schools. That's going to be a pretty fun environment to be in. If you're a player, a fan, an official, a coach, whatever that is, it's why you draw, what you hope happens when you draw up the schedule for a night game in May. I think they're about to get that. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, yes.
So I've been thinking, while we're talking about county tournaments, obviously I've been thinking about what happened with Essex County with, Seton Hall backing out, and I'm curious about your guys' thoughts. Like, do you think that there needs to be more of a discussion regarding some of these private schools playing in the county tournaments? In your opinion, is there like an asterisk next to Livingston's championship this year? I've been thinking about it a lot since, I think it's actually really cool, what Livingston and Verona were able to do. So I'm just curious about your guys' thoughts on that.
Well, do you think Summit has an asterisk because Bosco didn't play in the Chris Cup in year one?
Well, that's different. That's open to like the non-public champion. They there's no regional parameters of the Curse Cup, right? Like there's regional parameters of the Essex County tournament. And just because we're talking about it, how many players from Westfield, excuse me, how many players from Seton Hall weren't from Essex County schools? I think that's like the crux of the argument.
Got it.
That's more so what I mean.
Oh yeah. Well, in that regard, I mean, if you're a school that's winning it freaking every year, yeah, I don't think it. If you can do what Seton Hall did, now they're going to go out there, get to play, Iona Prep or a Fairfield Prep, and get a different level of lacrosse that they're looking for to get them ready for the playoffs. I think it makes sense. It doesn't make much sense for them to go through the gauntlet when they've already played half those teams anyway, and took care of business, by almost running time for most of the Essex County games that they have played. Um, so I think it makes sense. I think it should always be a conversation. I don't think you can take away from anyone because, like you said, like whatever team's there is there. You have to still get the job done, and if Seton Hall doesn't want to be there, then they don't get any crown. Like, oh well, if we were in it, we would have won it. Well, you weren't in it, so there should not be any asterisks, and we got to give our flowers to the team that stepped in and got the job done. If they want to come back, then they can come back and they can win it. If they want to, have that title. But I think if other counties did that as well, and I think it'd be all for it, more so. We don't need to see these private schools, win these county tournaments every single year. The Barn's been doing it for a while. You just said Bosco, how many years in a row have they won? Seton Hall has been an absurd amount of times. And again, it does make sense because you're literally drawing from all these schools that you're playing against. So it's like, oh, so here's all the schools playing against, you're playing an all-star team, right? So it's like, I get, then them not being part of it, but at the same time, there are some private schools out there that don't have that luxury, and aren't as good as some of the public schools in their area. And so on the flip side, I understand that perspective as well.
Tharp, this is exactly actually your dream scenario. The thing that you had talked about earlier in the season about you want schedule flexibility. Well, here it is. Like this was like, oh, all right, this is a particular year where the competition within that county relative to the talent for Seton Hall Prep, maybe it was not, or we'll say it was a little incongruous, right, compared to the other teams that they might play throughout that tournament. So they said, we're not going to do that. We're going to execute some schedule flexibility. So you should be all for this. This is your dream coming true.
I think I'm thinking of it more from the perspective of like I do think there is something to be said for like the kids from that. Like I said, what is more pure than Livingston versus Verona, right? That's just like pure gritty Essex County lacrosse, and it's like it's not to say that Don Bosco's a poor representation of you know Bergen County, for example, but it's like you know is every kid on that roster from Bergen County? No. And I was having this conversation today with somebody, and I said, I wonder if the fix is like you can only play the kids who live in the county, and that's a whole thing, right? Like then you're checking addresses and stuff, which I know is like a logistical nightmare, but like I do like I think that this has opened like the eyes to some people. Like I know, like in wrestling, Delbarton doesn't compete in the Morris County Championships for wrestling. They are a national powerhouse in wrestling, so they go do their own thing. So I just think it's a really interesting discussion, and we laughed about it a few years ago. Keith, I'm sure you remember there was a when you were doing the rules interpretation meeting, someone dropped in the chat, like when is the state going to get away from private schools and county tournaments? Um, and it's like kind of playing out a little bit. But I will say, like, I'm super lucky that I won, 3 county championships at Pingree, and it was like some of the greatest games I've ever been a part of. And I think part of that's like Pingree's in a unique spot where the Skyland, a lot of those schools are those big Group 4, Group 3 schools, and Pingree's on the smaller side. Rutgers Prep now is on the smaller side, so getting to compete against those bigger schools, for many years, prior to COVID. Somerset was dominated by schools like Ridge and Bridgewater, and I know Montgomery made the finals a couple of years when you guys were coaching there. So, I definitely agree with you, Glock. There's some nuance to it, but I do think it's cool that getting to see Verona and Livingston have that opportunity. So
And I do think too that the level of play of lacrosse in those places is elevating, right? So don't be shocked if that continues either. You know what I mean? Whether or not Seton Hall is included. So I learned a long time ago not to count Dave Gianrusso out of too many things because the man can coach. All right, before we get to our top 20, we're going to have if I had funeral music ready here, I would play it, Tharp, for you, because your pick'em season is just on its way to the grave. We're not even going to do pick'em this week because Gil's not here, and Tharp didn't go your way last week. 5-0 for Gil last week, 1-4 for you. I give you the floor for 30 seconds to give yourself your own eulogy.
yeah, I mean, it kind of started as a bit, and then we just ran with it. You take the 2-goal loss for Seton Hall against St. Augustine is one thing, but I mean, I'm not speaking poorly of these teams, but like Tom's River South got boat raced. The other, just some of the teams just was absolute annihilation. Wasn't even competitive. So, sometimes you just gotta, you do something for the bit. You live by the bit, you die by the bit. And you know, some people say it's more impressive to go 1-4 than 5-0. So
Yeah, I think you and your wife were the only two people that said that, but that's fine. We'll go with that. The season totals for everybody keeping track out there. Gil has a 23-12 record, and Tharp is creeping back towards 500 and complete mediocrity at 19-16. We'll see if we can get back to the pick'em when Gil returns with us, hopefully next week. Let's get it to our top 20. The topic of conversation again this week's behind the scenes in the creation of this poll was not the top 10 because the top 10 remains unchanged, not in terms of the total order, but the teams within the top 10 remained the same and they just switched spots a little bit. So I'm going to actually give you the top 10 first this week because most of the conversation is around that 13, 14, 15 down to 20 spot. So St. Aug's remains number 1 in the poll, Delbarton remains number 2, and Summit remains number 3. Don Bosco comes in this week at number 4, Seton Hall Prep at 5, Chatham at 6, Shawnee 7, Scotch Plains Fanwood 8th, Rumson is up to 9th, and Ridgewood is down 1 slot to number 10. So that remains pretty status quo. Now here's where things, a little bit of a shakeup coming. Westfield stands pat at 11, and CBA is up to number 12. West Morris sticks at 13. Bergen Catholic at 14. Bridgewater down 3 spots to 15. Gill down a couple of spots to 16. Mountain Lakes stays right where it is at number 17. And then you have Notre Dame move up 2 spots to 18. St. Joe's goes from out of the poll to number 19. And Ocean City makes its first appearance in the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast Top 20, coming from the unranked region of the state to number 20. So, boys, I don't want to give you an unlimited leash here because I had to watch 4.9 million text messages in our group chat debate this already. But take us through kind of where you land in the back half of the top 20, back quarter of the top 20, and why.
I think it's really impressive. Like, I will say, I think today was the angriest the group chat has been. Um, it was a lot of cursing. Um, I think Gil just like put his phone away for 2 hours and didn't respond, and then he came back. Um, I think that I know, but chime in whenever. I think it's like it comes down like we get so mad about like the last three spots, and it's like, dude, we're gonna do the same fight next week. So, I think I'll say for me, my point of contention and where these guys got mad at me is, I put Ocean City up at 17, and I unranked Mountain Lakes, and the big reason for me is that I think that Ocean City is playing some really great lacrosse right now. And it's one of those things that we've talked about. It's kind of what have you done for me lately? And right now they've kind of compiled a group of wins, highlighted by wins over Haddonfield Southern and Morristown specifically, that I think have shown that they are they're not only good wins, but they're proof that they're playing their best lacrosse right now in the moment. Whereas, looking at Mountain Lakes, for example, they're and these guys laughed at me, but in the month of April, starting from April 1 to May, as of this morning, they're a below 500 team with about a negative 20 something goal differential. And for me, their last of all their losses, and again, this is a stat that made Nova angry. Of their seven losses, five of them, the other team did not have to keep it in at the end of the game, which means those games were a pretty decent spread in terms of the final score. So I think that for me, like a lot of Mountain Lakes' success came within the first five games where, they had wins over Northern Highlands and Sparta and Bergen Catholic and Randolph. But ever since those first five games, sprinkling the loss to Madison in there, it's been a wholly un a it's been a resume that's been lacking, and um, you know that really upset Gil. And I know Gil's not here to defend himself or talk about it, but he has Randolph ranked, and we were just kind of going back and forth about good losses and bad wins, or good losses compared to just wins in general, or what Gil would consider um, a good win or a bad win, and then that spiraled into talks of strength of schedule, which I think is just a different discussion that we can get into. But does that kind of sound fair, Nova?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think, I mean, ultimately, when we had this conversation, the heated debate, it came down to Ocean City and Lakes. I don't think that was like really the whole picture of it. I think the bigger issues arrive from teams like Pingree, Randolph, not getting into the top 20 because you had Ocean all the way up to 17, even over teams again that we know we kind of had ranked and everything else in between. And again, you bump Lakes all the way out, where me and Gil both had Lakes, I believe I don't have my sheet right in front of me, but I believe right around that 17,
Yeah, you
uh,
both had them at 17. I had them unranked.
right at the 17 range. And so ultimately it came down to how can you like there has to be a balance. You can't continue to dock a team at the same time, no matter what the score and outlook comes from, if they're playing a superior strength of schedule. When they're playing incredibly talented teams, you have to look at it in the other perspective is if Ocean City played the same exact schedule as Mountain Lakes played, I don't see a world where they have a better record. Their games are any closer, and everything else kind of in between, because at the same time, they have nothing to back that up or justify that that will be the case. I think Mountain Lakes has six top 20 losses. I think every team below them, plus the next two teams that we have left off, haven't even played top 20 teams six times total. So it's tough to justify bashing a team that, yes, they got crushed by Delbarn, who is a top 10 team in the country, not just the state of New Jersey. And I think that would be the same case for any team that we have from 15 down. So I think that's just kind of where the heated debate kind of came from, how we kind of, Randolph got left off the list. Pingree got left off the list, and then Ocean City kind of snuck in because Tharp just had him so far off his list, and Lakes was nowhere to be seen on his list. So it's kind of just like a triangle rotation of stuff, but it ultimately came down to why do you have Lakes nowhere in your top 20, and Ocean bumped all the way up to 17. And then again, you shit on Notre Dame with their wins last week. And now all of a sudden they're in your top 20 as well, when they did pretty much nothing except beat two teams by 12 goals who aren't even on the first two pages of Lax numbers essentially. So that's kind of where all the debates kind of came from.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so first off, for me, like I had Ocean City ranked last week. So for me, bumping them up to 17 was a matter of like one or two spots, if that. So like it wasn't like they came from out of absolutely nowhere to 17. And the other thing, like I said to you guys, is like I think strength of schedule matters if you're winning the games. Like you can say that Ocean City would also, would lose, but so did Mountain Lakes. Like Mountain Lakes hasn't won any of these higher level games. They just got mercy ruled by Delbarton. Like, so if you're gonna sit here and say, "Oh, Ocean City would get mercy ruled," well, like I just watched Lakes get it, like get mercy ruled. So like I think it's so disingenuous to say that Lakes should be rewarded for a hard schedule when they haven't won any of those games. I think the best example of this is like Westfield. Westfield has a really, really great strength of schedule, but they've won some of those games. They beat Seton Hall, they beat Shawnee, they beat Pingree. Like that's a team where like if they were, going into today, they're 7-7. And if I tried to rank, you know, um, Notre Dame above Westfield, you guys would like lose your mind because it's like, well, yeah, Westfield's 7-7, but look who they played. And I would, and it's easy to say, yeah, and they've won those games. But for me, I'm not going to sit here and reward Mountain Lakes for like losing every game. And again, not super competitively, quite frankly. Like, again, they lost to Bosco by 3, but the rest of these games have all been 6 or 7 plus, and some of them have been double digits. So, for me, I think that I really value how Ocean City's playing lately. Again, wins over Southern, Moorestown, Haddonfield, who just took Westfield to double overtime today. A 1-goal loss to CBA. Like I really, really respect that. And again, it's like, how are you playing right now? It's like we're at the point of the season where you're not as boosted by what you did from in March. So again, like we can sit here and say Ocean City would lose to like Randolph, but like again, using lax numbers, Randolph's lower ranked than Southern and Haddonfield, who Ocean City beat. Like, and again, if you want to say that, yeah, Ocean City would get smacked by the barn, okay, so did Mountain Lakes. So for me, it's like, and like Randolph, for example, like their best wins are over the like 37th, 38th, and 40th ranked teams on lax numbers. And it's like I think that Ocean City's just playing who's in front of them and like they're winning the games. Like I don't care if it's sexy, I don't care if it's by a certain amount, they're winning the games, they're beating like decent teams. Southern's a top 25 team. Haddonfield's a top 25 team. So I think that that's kind of where I stand in it of and I know you guys lost your mind when I said strength of schedule doesn't matter, but again, if you're 0-7 against the top 20, that doesn't you don't get a boost because you're 0-7. If you
Yeah,
played
but
every single
Mountain
team,
Lakes does have top 20 wins.
right, they have one top 20 win.
Well, according to our list last week, it was two, but yes, it will be one after this week. They have three good wins, just as many as Ocean City, and they have no bad losses, which Ocean City absolutely has a bad loss. So,
I know, but I understand, but it's like they're getting crushed in these games. They're not like one goal losses.
yes, but again, to us, we are very hard on teams. Example, Kingsway, if because they have such a weak schedule, right? Pingree, we talked about, I think 2 weeks ago. Pingree had the lowest strength of schedule, so that's why we went with Notre Dame, over Pingree. So on the flip side, we have to also reward teams that either get screwed because of where they live, or they actually want to go out there and play the best teams. They don't want to hide behind just trying to get wins left and right. And so you have to acknowledge that as well. Again, there's a lot of teams that if they played that same schedule, it'd be a lot worse. And again, we can't be throw hypotheticals here left and right all day long because again, we got to go with what we have. But yeah, so they got blown out by a couple of top five teams in New Jersey. They're not a top five team. Any team we're talking about right now is not a top five team. None of these teams are even close to that. There's tiers to this for sure. And I think that's just ultimately kind of where it kind of the debate kind of just continue to go within a circle.
I think it's disingenuous to say like, well, like it's their conference, like that they have to play those games. Like, and again, like Ocean City's going out of their way to play these games. Like, I just think that, like, again, these like if they were losing every game by one goal, right, or an overtime or whatever, like that's a totally different conversation. But like again, it's like these like what like again, especially in the past few weeks, like and even you've acknowledged this, like the recency starts to play more of a factor than what you've done in the past month. Like I said, in the past 6 weeks, they're an under 500 team with a minus 20 goal differential. Like how I'm like struggling to see how like if you had a 20 game schedule or a 19 game schedule and you played teams 1 through 19 and you go 0 and 19, you don't deserve to be ranked because you played a top 20 schedule. Like you have to win one of these games at some point.
Yeah, well, of course. But like I said, they have good wins under their belt. They have top 20 wins under their belt. And they're most of all their losses are to top 20 teams. So like again, if they were like Randolph last year where they're 3-13, they have a really tough schedule, but then they lose to Jefferson and Warren Hills, yeah, they're not getting ranked. But that's not the case. They're losing to the best of the best right now. Chaminade lost to Delbarn by 10 goals. Like Chaminade on paper would be favorited in every single game that they play against New Jersey teams minus Delbarton. Like, so it's like it happens. It's part of the game, but at the same time, we can't be just
Right, but
knocking
now, but there's a
knocking a team
pattern.
because
There's a
they're losing to
pattern here.
Delbarton by 10 goals.
There's a pattern of non-competitiveness. This isn't a one-off, right? Like Westfield got their doors blown off by Rumson and they responded. Like this is a pattern of non-competitiveness in these upper level games. Whereas like, and I just think that like, and again, it's more so. It's like you guys are like hammering me for having Ocean City at 17 and like stealing a spot from like Pingree, where like Gil having Randolph at 18, like totally also steals a spot from somebody. Like, like I don't know how close you considered ranking Randolph. Like, I just think that like I'm getting hammered for a team that I had in my top 20 last week. And like, Randolph again, loses this week. Gil doesn't move them at all. And it's like, okay, why is he not getting any pushback on that?
Because
Like,
it didn't affect our rankings. It doesn't they
right,
weren't
but
going to
if
make it
if if
anyway.
he puts Pingree at 18 and throws Randolph in at 20 as a pity vote, then Pingree's ranked. I
That is
had
true.
Ocean City ranked last week.
You did?
I'm gonna move them up if somebody in front of them drops out, right? Like that's how this works.
Oh, be careful, Bill. You're treading on some waters there from earlier in the season where that didn't necessarily happen in that exact same way. So,
Oh, but
uh,
I'm saying in the back end, especially like Ramapo loses, they drop out. Randolph loses, they drop out. Like I bumped Ocean City up one spot. Like it's just like constant like what you're such an idiot, you're such an idiot, you're such an idiot. And I explain myself, and it's like well, that's not like a good enough answer. And it's like, I'm just saying, like, what have you done for me lately? Like, again, like it's just, and like Madison, who we don't have in our top 20, wasn't even considered. Like, Lakes barely beats them. They have a closer than expected game against a 2-11 team. Like,
Okay,
I
yeah.
don't think it's
Well,
outrageous to say that
Bridgewater got their butt absolutely whooped by Rumson. What happened with Bridgewater in your rankings?
I dropped them.
You moved them up.
No, I didn't. I
Oh, you
dropped
dropped them
them.
one spot. You dropped them one spot.
Yeah, because what else happened behind West Morris got their ass kicked.
You
Gil
dropped
Gil had
you
Gil.
dropped Lakes, who was 6'4" against Madison, and then they got their bus kicked versus the number one team, the number five team like the country. So you moved them one, two, three, four spots out. Doesn't
Right.
really
But
all
again,
connect here.
but Bridgewater also just beat Glen Ridge, who's a fringe top 20 team. Like, that just happened. They have a win over Gill this season. That's better than any wins that I mean, Gill and Bergen are now side by side, but that's just as good as Mountain Lake's best win. Like, with much less like terrible losses. But I dropped Bridgewater, but like that whole middle group had a really rough week. Like, I'm not gonna, like, West Morris got hammered by Chatham, so I'm not gonna jump West Morris above Bridgewater. I moved Bergen above Gill. Like, I think I properly adjusted that middle of the pack, but I'm not gonna hammer Bridgewater for losing to a team they're expected to lose to. It's the same thing when Pingree lost to Westfield. We knew Pingree was an underdog to Westfield. The game got away from them a little bit. Like, that's that's how the game works. But you're not like, I'm not going to absolutely hammer a team when they lose to a team they're expected to lose to. But when you get mercy ruled by a team and you haven't been competitive for the last 6 weeks, you're going to like be affected.
So
Contradicting yourself now. We can move on.
I'm gonna synthesize this for everybody, and I'm gonna say this, and I think it's probably gonna come off a little harsher than I mean it, Bill, and I'm saying that very sincerely. Is that I think your process in ranking these teams is a little more simplistic than the methodology that Gil and Nova are using, because that, like, you're basing your ranking system a little less on these extra analytical pieces where Gil and
Really?
Nova are bringing. I mean, you kind of are. You're looking at those data points, but you're also maybe looking a little more at your poll and thinking common sense wise. Like, I'm not going to re-explain what you just explained. You're just saying I had this team and I'm going to move them up because they win, and another team, whatever, and goes down. Whereas Nova and Gil seem to be attacking the nature of your top 20 because they think, look, based on the data metrics, it should look different, maybe in whole. So and that's why I think that this is a great way that we do the rankings, and that everybody, the three of you that do it, have that equal footing. And if we were all in lockstep, what fun would this be, right? I mean, it's also, we know a little bit about lacrosse between the four of us here, and everybody's entitled to have a different opinion about it in one way or another. And we're also not, to the point that we started with, we're talking about the bottom quarter of our top 20 here. And if there isn't mobility in and out of that section, then that means it's a really, really bad state of affairs for the state of New Jersey. And I don't think that's where we are. So I think the debate that we're having here is a very healthy one. That's what I'll say to it as I put a pin in it.
I agree.
And boys, I think that's going to do it for this week. I think we are officially in the home stretch. We feel safe about calling it that?
We are in the home stretch.
All right. I like it. I don't have a stall warning question for you. It was a long weekend. I didn't sleep a ton, so you didn't get any advanced notice on that. So we will look forward, and as the home stretch, the horses start running down that home stretch, it's just going to get more exciting and more exciting. And I'm here for it. And I know you guys are too. And we're going to bring it all to you as the season really gets moving into the postseason. It's the New Jersey Lacrosse Podcast. I think we're kicking ass, boys.
Keep it rolling.
Tharpy, thank you, buddy. I know you had a tough one today. Keep your head up. Love you. Nova, I'm sure I'll talk to you boys 4.9 million times between now and then. This is Keith Glock, Bill Tharp, and Anthony Terranova saying thank you for watching.